everybody. Welcome into week 8 of DFS. This is the Adjusted Line Play Report presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. I am your host, Todd Hoffman. You can find myself over on Twitter at ToddZilla1337. You can find Zilla Fantasy Elite over on Twitter at Zilla Fantasy. Today's show is powered by Rain Total Body Fuel. Looking to make it rain some cash in DFS? Tune in to the Adjusted Line Play Report from Zilla Fantasy Elite and follow host Todd Hoffman while he delivers the most accurate DFS advice in the industry. And make it rain. All right, there we go, folks. We got Watermelon Warlord, Thermogenic, there we go. Oh, that's good stuff. Right there, start the day off. It is Saturday morning as we record this. We'll get into the week 8 slate. Just a brief overview. Week 7 was the first time this entire season that I did not make money in FanDuel tournaments. I lost 9 cents overall. So not that bad of a thing. I made up most of my entry fees back anyway. But yeah, first week in 7 weeks so far on FanDuel tournaments, not actually winning money. Lost 9 cents. Main reason, I had absolutely zero Joe Burrow stacks. I did have a Jamar Chase, quite a few T. Higgins in there, no Boyds. So I did get part of that game, but I had no exposure to super stack there, and it was very popular. I want to say Burrow was upwards of like 14%, and Chase and Higgins and Boyd were also fairly popular, and I wasn't on that necessarily, so I got buried by that particular thing. But still, hey, I only lost 9 cents on the week, and obviously the rest of the plays that I had for the slate ended up doing well. So just keep that in mind. 6 of 7 weeks now, we've actually made money in tournaments, not cash, tournaments on FanDuel. So this stuff is legit. We're going to get underway here for the week 8 slate, doing the London game. I know people do DFS here for just these kind of slates like that where, hey, it's an island game and you really need to, develop a plan or, a game scenario, and this really helps you build that out. So we're going to do the Denver-Jacksonville game again. Set your lineups. Make sure they're done appropriately. This is a London game. It's going to start early. But we're going to go in. It's a 40.5 point Vegas game total, so pretty low there. Jacksonville actually 2.5 point favorites over Denver. 21.5 team implied total for Jacksonville, 19 for Denver. We're looking at Denver on offense here. 22 and 26 in the offensive pass DVOA. Jacksonville 32 and 18. Let's run over to the run game real quick. 12 and 26 for Denver, 5 and 15 for Jacksonville there. So Denver likely not going to be able to run the ball very effectively in this particular matchup. We go over to the pass game, which has been atrocious this entire season. We see 22 and 26, which isn't great, but Jacksonville at 32 and 18. I actually think Denver is going to have a little bit more time to throw the ball this week than they're used to, and that could be very beneficial for Sutton and Russell Wilson in this particular matchup. I'm not expecting a barn burner. I just expect them to not look as ugly as they have in the past game throughout the entire season. So probably going to avoid that run game. Denver's already predicted to be down. And I don't think Denver is necessarily going to be under duress while passing. So I think Russ is going to have some time. I think that favors Sutton and Judy in this particular matchup. And we've seen Dulcich do really well, but that's typically when they're under duress. I don't know if he's going to get those shorter or quicker passes if he's got a little bit more time. But a little bit more time, he could have more time to get open. I just think it favors Sutton the most in this. If he's going to have some time, Sutton might get some deeper shots, or Judy might get some deeper shots. Hey, Hamler, he is a deep threat. That could be something very sneaky. Especially in these island games, getting Hamler in there. I'm sure he's super cheap. I haven't looked at the actual matchup yet, but keep that in mind. And then we're going to get to the Jacksonville offensive side. Number 6 and 7 in offensive pass protection, very good, but Denver 4th and 3rd in the defensive pass categories there. On the run blocking, we have Jacksonville at 27 and 18, Denver at 20 and 18. Kind of a stalemate here as far as the offensive line versus defensive line is concerned. Wouldn't expect Jacksonville to necessarily dominate in any particular category. I think, there's going to be times where they're under duress. There's going to be times where they have quite a bit of opportunity to pass the ball because the pass protection is good. Same on the run side. I think there will be holes at times to be able to get some running lanes there. ETN is certainly an explosive player, but I just don't expect that necessarily to be a super great matchup there for Jacksonville. Again, like if you're looking for island game pieces, Etienne probably my favorite in here, especially if Jacksonville's under duress. You could get the tight end. Evan Ingram would be interesting if you think Denver is going to be getting after the quarterback. He's probably going to be trying to get the ball out a little bit quicker than usual, so keep that in mind. So that's the island game there. That's the London game. Then we're going to head into the main slate here. And the top-ranked game on this week's slate is Miami at Detroit. It's actually been bet up since the beginning of the week. I think it started at 50. Now it's at 51.5. So it has been bet up, which is good. We actually have Miami going into Detroit, so a dome game here as 3.5-point road favorites. 27.5 team implied total. That's very nice. And Detroit sitting there at 24 team implied total. Again, the Vegas total 51.5 for the number 1 overall on the slate this week. We're looking at Miami offensive pass protection, number 13 and number 3. Detroit, pretty bad, 23 and 31. Miami's going to have a bazillion hours to throw the ball. And then we look at the run blocking, 23 and 17. Detroit, 25 and 29. Miami should also find success running the ball here, or at least more than what they're used to. Could be a good game for Mostert as well, getting all that rush in pass volume. Basically, he's the lead back there in Miami, so very interesting. But the pass game is something that I'm going to want to attack here in Miami. Plenty of time. I fully expect to see at least one deep shot or one deep touchdown in this if Detroit's not getting after the quarterback. I think Tua will find either Waddle or Hill for a nice deep throw. Certainly either of those two can house one as well on a short pass. So I don't mind Tua stacks in this, especially if there's going to have a lot of time. Gesicki could be the beneficiary of Waddle and Hill taking so much coverage, and they'll just find Gesicki underneath wide open. But yeah, I think Tua's in play. Gesicki, Tyreek Hill is going to be very good, and Jalen Waddle probably going to be the 3 big beneficiaries, I guess, in the pass game. And then Mostert, if you think Miami's going to be up on Detroit, kind of running the ball, Mostert's certainly in play. And in a dome, he's fast. He could bust a long one as well. So expect Miami to put up a bunch of points. Vegas, 27.5, team implied total there. We get to Detroit, and if they can hold their own, this could be a barn burner. So number 5 and number 19 in the pass protection, Miami 20 and 25. They shouldn't really be getting after the quarterback in this particular one, which is very good for Detroit's pass game. Certainly sounds like Swift is back. He'll be involved in the pass game. We have Hawkinson there, and it sounds like Amon-Ra St. Brown is questionable, but kind of in that concussion protocol where he caught one ball, got up. One of those spotters now with the new rules, saw some wobbliness in his musculature, whatever, his body. So I took him out for the rest of the game. I fully expect him to clear the concussion protocols. Didn't really have a concussion, just some wobbliness. So he should be ready to go full bore. Certainly a bring back partner for this Miami game. If Miami's going to be pushing it, it's certainly because Detroit has been putting up their fair share of points, and if they're passing it, that's pretty much going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's going to be Hawkinson, and that's going to be Swift for the most part. Hawkinson tends to kind of fade when more targets are there, but we've seen him have those ceiling games in the absence. So keep that in mind. On the run game, Miami number 4 and number 7 at stopping the run. Detroit 3rd and 12th. I don't know how great this run game is going to be. Jamal Williams is eating into a lot of the volume, at least rushing for DeAndre Swift. But if you expect Miami to be up in this, which I do, and Detroit kind of playing comeback mode, expect Detroit to be, potentially getting it to Swift in the pass game. The one thing I do like about this overall pace of play for Detroit, number 7. Miami not that fast, but 18th in overall pace of play, 21st in situation neutrals. If they're leading, though, they're 14th, so they're one of the faster teams, in the top half as far as when they're leading. And then Detroit's actually 21st when they're trailing, but their overall pace of play is 7 because their time they spend trailing is 21st. It's not very good. They 21st worst. So they spend quite a few moments trailing, which is probably why their overall pace of play is a little bit quicker. But if they get out to the lead, they're still one of the quicker paced teams when they're leading. So just keep that in mind. I think 51.5 certainly within range here. Wouldn't be surprised if Miami puts up 35. Detroit gets to 24, 27, somewhere in that range. Plenty of pieces to grab in your DFS lineup. So good to go on that one. We'll get to the number 2 game on the slate, which has actually changed. It started the very beginning of this. It started out actually as Arizona at Minnesota. They're now number 3 because Las Vegas and New Orleans got bet up so much. They are now at 49.5. I believe they started at 47, something like that this week. So Las Vegas going into New Orleans, another dome game. Excellent. Las Vegas 1.5 point road favorites at 25.5 team implied total. New Orleans 24 team implied total. Vegas game total overall 49.5, second best on the slate. Getting into Las Vegas's offense, 17 and 18 in the pass game. New Orleans 18 and 20. Pretty much a studs eat kind of thing. Nothing really kind of popping out, which usually means the people that are good at football are going to do their thing. Otherwise, people who aren't probably going to have a little bit worse of a game. Looking at the run blocking, Vegas number one, Saints 16 and 19. Certainly expect Josh Jacobs to get work on the ground and be successful in this again. The ones that I like in this, just based off of this, Jacobs, I don't know how popular he's going to be. I think he's expensive on FanDuel for sure. And I'm not entirely sure how popular he's going to be because of how expensive he is and just the way the slate is kind of shaping up. But if he's not going to be popular, he certainly should have a good game here in the Dome against New Orleans, especially if New Orleans is putting up points and causing Vegas to try to push the ball a little bit more. He should get plenty of scoring opportunities. If you want to prop bet, bet in anytime Josh Jacobs touchdown. I think that's certainly in play here. Otherwise, in DFS, if you want to get a little bit unique, a lot of the big sites are saying, hey, you got to get Devontae Adams or Derek Carr kind of stacks in there, and they're avoiding Josh Jacobs. I don't know if that's because they think Josh Jacobs is going to come in popular or not, but he is in a smash spot here for this particular matchup, and I think Devontae Adams, as far as like a studs eat type of thing, it's a good week for him. If you want to get kind of unique, maybe you could do, and it's expensive, but Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, and Josh Jacobs stacks, which would be very interesting route to go there. So on the New Orleans side, number 15 and number 25 in the offensive pass protection. Luckily for them, Vegas is at 25 and 30. So the Saints should have more time than they're typically used to throw the ball, which is good for Andy Dalton. We already have Jarvis Landry and Michael Thomas ruled out, which means Chris Olave is an excellent play both in cash and in tournaments. I think he's going to have a whopper of a day. You could also see Taysom Hill get quite a few fantasy points in this as they kind of lean on his abilities to be different, because the only other weapon besides Olave in this is really Alvin Kamara. And if we look at the run blocking, the Saints are second and third, which is very good. Vegas 7th and 20th in stopping the run. So Vegas 7th in the defensive stopping, but 20th in run DVOA. I think Alvin Kamara could certainly find himself with plenty of open running lanes in this. And be pretty efficient on the ground, especially, like I said, if New Orleans is moving the ball in the air. You could see Kamara getting those few targets as well and just getting there. But yeah, both running backs seem to be in play in this. I wouldn't necessarily play that in any sort of DFS lineup because they're relatively expensive, and two running backs in the same game don't necessarily play out. But could get interesting. I do think New Orleans can put up some points on Vegas here. Andy Dalton certainly in play if you want to do like just the opposite of the Derek Carr, do the Andy Dalton, Alvin Kamara, and Chris Olave stack. That's going to be a lot cheaper than the Vegas one and probably equally as many points. So keep that in mind. Should be interesting. New Orleans does play a little bit fast, number 9 overall. Vegas a little bit slower, but when they're leading, they're one of the faster teams when leading. So again, this could push the pace a little bit. But if Saints get out ahead, Vegas doesn't really seem like they speed up at all. Just keep that in mind. Next, we'll get on to the number 3 game on the slate, which is Arizona at Minnesota. Another dome game. Surprise, surprise. Top 3 all in domes. Arizona heading into Minnesota. Minnesota 3.5-point home favorites, 26.25 team implied total. Arizona 22.75 team implied total for a Vegas game total overall of 49. We'll get into the Arizona offense here. Number 14 offensive pass protection, number 28 offensive pass DVOA. Minnesota number 9 and 21. That's a little bit in the favor of Minnesota's pass rush. They haven't been, necessarily great in the pass game, but just keep that in mind. I think Arizona, it won't be, particularly bad for them in this kind of one of those studs eat type of matchups, which is going to be very good for DeAndre Hopkins. If you think Minnesota's going to be getting after Arizona, it's probably just going to be more Kyler being flushed out and some dump offs to Benjamin or Zach Ertz in this particular matchup. Hopkins does play underneath as well. It would be a fade more so for Rondale Moore on this particular game if you think they're going to be trying to pass the ball a little bit quicker. I think he's not necessarily going to benefit from that with the other weapons underneath. As far as the run blocking, Arizona 24th and 21st, Minnesota 15th and 21st. Again, that's pretty even there. Arizona not necessarily going to struggle in this particular matchup on the offensive side, but also shouldn't be super easy sledding for them. And I think based off of this, Benjamin certainly in play in cash. I think he's going to have plenty of volume. I'm not necessarily sure if he's going to be scoring a ton of touchdowns in this, but hey, if Minnesota's getting after him, they're finding some success in the run game. Benjamin could be certainly in play. If you're playing an island game, I think Keontae Ingram is actually the one that you're going to want for touchdown plunges. Just keep that in mind. On the Minnesota side, it gets a little bit more exciting. We have number 8 in offensive pass protection, number 17 in offensive pass DVOA versus Arizona 30 and 27. They absolutely give it up on the defensive side for the pass game, and this is very good for Minnesota. I think Minnesota at home, Sunday early game, Kirk Cousins going to have a smash game. He's like number 3 or 4 overall price quarterback on FanDuel, so you're not getting any discounts there on him, which is unfortunate, but I think Justin Jefferson in this, as I had tweeted out on Tuesday, I think this is one of those 150 and 2 touchdown games for Justin Jefferson. Get him into your lineups. I think he is in an absolute smash spot here. Minnesota's run game, 8 and 9, run blocking and run DVOA, very good, but Arizona 8 and 6 in stopping the run. I don't expect Dalvin Cook to necessarily have a very good game. Arizona's run defense is pretty good, and that probably means Dalvin Cook is a massive fade in this, even though they have a pretty high team implied total, which is usually good for running backs. And Minnesota certainly should be able to move the ball on Arizona. I don't see Cook necessarily getting there on volume and rushing efficiency. The only thing you would need is Minnesota gets the ball down near the end zone and he plunges in, 2 touchdowns. But again, the ceiling is going to be capped. I don't think he's necessarily going over 100 yards in this in any receiving or rushing categories. It would be more so, hey, he got 12 or 13 touches, 60 yards, and scored twice because Minnesota moved the ball and got into scoring position. That's not really getting it done in DFS, especially for Cook kind of being one of those more mid-range or, not elite options for this particular matchup. Pace of play does get interesting. Arizona number 4, Minnesota number 6 overall. So this should go back and forth. Like I said, if Arizona finds it, not super difficult to move the ball, this could be, a fantasy bonanza. Like I said, I think if Arizona can push it as well, we'll see Minnesota passing the ball all over them, which is very good for Justin Jefferson's overall output. So I do like that. Now we'll get on to the number 4 game on the slate, which is Sunday evening. It's New York Giants at Seattle. Battle of the division leaders here. New York Giants surprisingly only 1 loss. Seattle leading their division. Who would have thought at this point in the season? Giants going into Seattle is actually Seattle 3-point home favorites there. 23.75 team implied total. Giants at 20.75, and we go from Minnesota and Arizona at 49 points all the way down to 44.5 points for the next closest game. That's a huge gap. Just keep that in mind when you're building your lineups. The Giants' offensive pass protection, 30th and 8th. Seattle not particularly great at 15 and 19, but probably going to be a little bit under duress. But the Giants, the kind of out of pass game options is Wan'Dale Robinson, and that's pretty much it at this particular moment for them. Darius Slayton is there as well, but hey, if you think the Giants are going to be under duress, it's probably going to be Wan'Dale Robinson, Saquon Barkley type of matchup. The new tight end there, I can't even, it starts with an M. He's certainly interesting dart throw within DraftKings DFS. If you think New York Giants are going to be actually under duress in the pass game. If you think they're going to have a little bit more time, which this necessarily isn't suggesting, Darius Slayton would be your option there for the Giants. And the run blocking 18 and 6 versus Seattle 21 and 17. Studs eat kind of thing. DVOA suggesting it could be more explosive, which goes right into Saquon Barkley's wheelhouse. Barkley should have a pretty solid game in this. Like I said, if the Giants are under pressure, it's more targets for him. Even if they're not, it's just going to be they're going to be moving the ball better and more scoring opportunities for him moving forward. But he should have a pretty solid game. Don't know if he's necessarily worth the price in DFS, but you should be starting him obviously in any of your season-long lineups. And then we'll move on to the Seattle side here. Offensive pass protection 25 and 4 in the pass DVOA. Giants not very good at getting after the quarterback at 28 and 26. They're even worse in the run game at 31 and 30th. Seattle 22nd and 10. Seattle should be able to move the ball quite easily on the Giants. We should see plenty of time and success in the pass game. It doesn't sound like DK Metcalf's going to be playing, so we're going to be looking at Tyler Lockett. We did see Marquise Goodwin kind of come in and score last week. Should be interesting to monitor there if any of the other receivers come in. But I think without DK Metcalf, they're going to rely heavily on Lockett and Kenneth Walker. And Kenneth Walker is kind of in a smash spot here. He's probably going to be super popular in DFS, but it shouldn't matter. The Giants not very good at stopping the run. Kenneth Walker seems like he is a legit stud, so get him into your lineups. Probably avoiding any Geno stacks, but looking at, hey, if you're going to do a run back, Wan'Dale Robinson and Tyler Lockett, or Wan'Dale Robinson and Kenneth Walker, or hey, Tyler Lockett and Saquon Barkley, something like that. But that's how I'd attack this game. Not going to stack any of the quarterbacks, I don't think, in this particular matchup, but looking for either Barkley or Lockett or Kenneth Walker in this particular matchup. Again, that's the number 4 game on the slate. Super Down there already at 44.5 versus, the 49 points that we had the game before. Now we'll go to Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh going into Philly, battle for the state here. I think the Keystone State in Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh going into Philly as 10.5-point road dogs. So Philly favored by 10.5, 26.75 team implied total. Pittsburgh only 16.25 team implied total there. Again, Vegas game total overall 43 points for the number 5 game on the slate. Those top 3 standing significantly out above the rest of these guys. Pittsburgh coming in offensive pass protection number 9 and 21. Philly 11 and 2. Probably going to need a little bit quicker passes here, but looking at the run game, 25 and 30 versus Philly 24 and 22. Pittsburgh actually might find it a little bit easier to run the ball in this particular matchup than they're used to. Najee might not, he's not going to be a great play, but you might find him with a little bit more success in this particular matchup than what he has been showing all season. In the pass game, hey, if they're going to be under duress, it's probably going to be Deontay Johnson underneath, some Najee Harris targets underneath, and Freiermuth. But we also see a trend here with Kenny Pickett. He does like George Pickens. George Pickens seems like he is a very solid wide receiver. I don't know if he's necessarily going to get a ton of volume in this, but hey, he seems to have a connection there. Wouldn't be surprised to see him with 5 catches for 60, 70 yards and, 0.4 touchdowns, 40% likelihood that he scores one, 60% that he doesn't type of thing. But I don't think Pittsburgh's going to be super terrible at moving the ball in Philly here, just based off of this. Pass game's not particularly great, but the run game should be a little bit more successful than what they have been for most of the year. On the Philadelphia side, we have number 21 and 6 in the pass protection side. Pittsburgh falling since the beginning of the year with the TJ Watt injury. 26 and 15 in the pass DVOA versus 21 and 6 for Philly there. Kind of a studs eat type of matchup. Philly's pass game should be a little bit more explosive, as the DVOA is kind of suggesting here, which is in A.J. Brown territory, studs eat type of deal. Same with the pass or the run game. 15 and 5 for Philly. Pittsburgh 11 and 9 at stopping the run. It's more of a studs eat. I don't think Miles Sanders necessarily qualifies as that, but this is kind of an interesting matchup. 43 points. They're expecting Philly to kind of rack up some points. I think A.J. Brown and Hurts will do plenty well. And they should be able to run the ball just fine, but I'm not entirely sure with Pittsburgh's offense there if they're going to keep it a little bit closer than what the Vegas line is suggesting here. Not a ton of fantasy options that I want out of this, especially on the Pittsburgh side. On the Philly side, though, I think A.J. Brown is certainly in play. Jalen Hurts is a cash game option for sure in your DFS lineups, but keep that in mind. I don't particularly like this matchup. They say Philly's going to dominate, but the offensive pass protection is kind of suggesting that it's not going to be super easy sledding for them against Pittsburgh. They should be fine, but they're not going to be elite. And then Pittsburgh, might be able to move the ball a little bit easier than people are expecting on Philly's defense there. Keep that in mind. They could be a lot closer than the 10.5 points is suggesting. I don't want to say it's going to be an upset here, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is a close matchup. On to the number 6 game on the slate, Chicago at Dallas. So Dallas coming in here, second game, full game with Dak Prescott. Chicago going into the Dome in Dallas as 10-point road dogs. So Dallas, 10-point favorites, 26.25 team implied total. Chicago, 16.25 team implied total. For a Vegas game total overall of 42.5, which is super low. Not entirely sure what's up with the NFL scoring this year, but it is down significantly. A lot of these games are low 40s or below 40, which has not been seen a ton. On a week-to-week basis, 42.5 would typically be the worst game on the slate, and here it's middle of the road, Just keep that in mind. Kind of scoring is down in the league overall. On the Chicago offensive side, they're not expected to score a lot of points. We see the pass protection 32nd and 31st. Dallas first and first. Dallas defense should absolutely steamroll Chicago in this as far as the pass game is concerned. If that's the case, I do expect Justin Fields to have a very interesting week. I think turnovers and sacks are certainly going to be in play, but he might drop back and scramble a little bit more. Maybe you see 12, 15 rush attempts from him, and he makes it happen on the ground. I just don't expect him to have a very good game through the air. They don't really have underneath targets outside of Montgomery and their running back crew there. I don't know. Kmet doesn't seem like he's super good. Mooney's very good receiver, but more of a medium to long range depth type of target. He does get some bubble screens and stuff underneath, but those aren't super highly fantasy productive. Chicago's offense should be not very good in the air game. I'm just saying Justin Fields, if he's going to do it, it's going to be on the ground as a rushing. And we do look at the rushing attempts there. Chicago 10 and 19, Dallas 14 and 12. Nothing really to glean here, just studs eat type of thing, but Chicago running backs are kind of splitting work there. If Chicago's going to move the ball, it's going to be on the ground. Expect them to try to do that to limit Dallas's pass rush. I just don't think that's really going to be feasible for Chicago because I think they're going to be down in this particular matchup. We do look on this. Dallas, number 7 in offensive pass protection, 20th in the pass DVOA. Chicago, 22nd and 12. Dallas should find themselves with a decent amount of time to pass the ball here. They did just trade away one of the edge rushers there, which just means that pass rush is going to be all the weaker. Dallas, plenty of time to pass. That's going to be good for CeeDee Lamb. Probably going to be good for Michael Gallup as well. We did see him blank people last week, so keep that in mind. He's going to be super low rostered this week. And we saw him 2 weeks ago have a very nice outing in his first time back from his injury, so keep that in mind. On the offensive run blocking, this is where it gets really good. Zeke, doubtful. Tony Pollard is going to be in. He's in pretty much all of your lineups, cash, tournaments, whatever. He's super high upside and in a good spot here with the run blocking at 7 and 8 versus Chicago's 22 and 24. Should see Pollard, upwards 6 to 8 yards per carry in this matchup. Probably going to score if Dallas is moving the ball quite a bit, especially if Dallas is turning the ball over on defense. Those Pollard Dallas defense stacks in DFS could get very interesting and high scoring there. But yeah, Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, Schultz, if you think he's going to get a touchdown, could be viable just as kind of one of those dart throws. Dallas does play pretty quick there, 10 and 8 in offensive neutral situations. When they're leading, they're the 6th fastest. So expect Dallas to put up a bunch of points. Could be one of those onslaughts where, hey, you're starting Pollard and you're getting 2 or 3 pieces of Dallas in there, Pollard and Lamb and Gallup, something like that. Just expecting Dallas's defense to turn the ball over. Dallas scoring 5 or 6 touchdowns in this particular matchup and just blowing them out. You want pieces of that, so keep that in mind. One of those onslaught games that you could get for just on the Dallas side. Next, we'll go down to 7th game on the slate, San Francisco at the Rams. Who would have thought at this point that this isn't going to be like a 50-point game total, down to 41.5. We have San Francisco actually going into the Rams as half-point favorites. 21 implied team total. Los Angeles Rams 20.5. Again for that Vegas game total. 41.5, 7th on the slate. Looking at the offensive pass for San Francisco, 16 and 11, Rams 17 and 14. Nothing to really gleam there. That's more of a studs eat type of thing. If that's the case, and we have Debo out, Ayuk is certainly good in his own right, but I think this is going to be one of those George Kittle weeks. I don't know how many people are going to be playing him, but he could break the slate on the tight end side of things this week. Keep that in mind, especially in your tournaments. He could be, giving you 20, 30 DraftKings points this week. especially when we look at the run side. San Francisco 21st and 24th. Rams 19 and 2nd at stopping the run. They do have Christian McCaffrey there now. Don't expect him to have a very efficient week against the Rams. I think they can still stop the run just fine. And if San Francisco's got a decent amount of time, but not a ton, you might see him get out in space and catch a few balls, but I think it's going to be more of one of those George Kittle weeks. Just keep that in mind. I think that's a very good play this week in DFS. Not going to put any Jimmy G stacks together, but Kittle, I do like him this week, as I said like 5 times. Los Angeles Rams, offensive pass protection 26-24. San Francisco 3rd and 9 at getting after the quarterback. And then on the run side, it's even worse. Rams 32nd and 23rd. San Francisco 2nd and 5th at stopping the run. Don't expect the Rams to be able to move the ball. I don't think this is a half-point game. I would bet San Francisco is going to kind of whomp them here. On the pass protection side, we've seen that with them being kind of under duress in these particular matchups. It just leads to Stafford focusing solely on Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp probably going to see 12 to 15 targets in this particular matchup, probably upwards of 10 to 13 receptions. It's going to leave other players like Van Jefferson and Allen Robinson in the dust. So Cooper Kupp, main beneficiary. We've also seen Higbee get a lot of that underneath work. Just keep that in mind. We do have Henderson Henderson there as the Darrell Henderson, as the running back. He is certainly profiles as a pass-catching running back. He could see some additional targets in this if they're getting after the quarterback. Just keep that in mind, especially with Akers out. We could see him get heavily involved. I'm not sure where Kyron Williams is on his return from injury, but I think it's pretty much the Darrell Henderson show there. It's just not something that I'm interested in starting because I don't think the Rams are going to have very many scoring opportunities. If you're in a PPR league and desperate to start somebody this week, Henderson certainly should get the vast volume for the running backs there. I just don't know what that's necessarily worth in a slow-paced offensive situation that doesn't project to score very high. It's going to be a Cooper Kupp show, and Darrell Williams, if you think he's going to get 4 or 5 catches, probably going to be okay in your seasonal long leagues in PPR. But otherwise, pretty gross game. Really only interested in Kupp and Kittle in this particular matchup. I think we see CMC not get a ceiling game yet again. Let's go on to the number 8 game on the slate, which is actually Carolina-Atlanta. I do like this one, just in theory. 2 terrible defenses. They got a Vegas total of 41 overall, and we have Atlanta as 4-point home favorites. This is really weird. Whoever wins this game is actually going to be leading their division. So we had Seattle as a surprise. Carolina-Atlanta just looked horrible all year. Like, 2 of the worst teams absolutely in the NFL, like 2 of the worst 5, and whoever wins this matchup actually will take the lead in the NFC South division. Absolutely bonkers. Again, Atlanta 4-point home favorites, 22.5 team implied total. Carolina 18.5, 41 overall for Vegas. Number 8 game on the main slate. Carolina offensive pass protection 27, 32nd, really bad. Atlanta 31st and 32nd in the pass rush. Expect Carolina to get some time. I think this is a DJ Moore week. We just saw Robbie Anderson get traded out of there. I think DJ Moore is going to see quite a few targets and be successful there against this Atlanta team that's also missing a bunch of their cornerbacks, which was kind of their one strength that they had on defense going into the season. And as far as the run game, 11th and 15th for Carolina. Atlanta 29 and 26. Deonta Foreman looks like he is the sole beneficiary of the Chuba Hubbard injury. He is now doubtful or ruled out, and I would expect him to have a very solid week. So not necessarily going to stack this game, but it could be wilder things. PJ Walker with DJ Moore and Deonta Foreman, they should all do pretty well. At least DJ Moore and Deonta Foreman, I think, will have good games in here. On the Atlanta side, they are favored 31st in offensive pass protection, 15th in offensive pass DVOA. Carolina 29 and 22. Again, Atlanta here should have more time to pass the ball than what they're usually used to. Don't know if that'll amount to much if they're not passing the ball. On the run game side, Atlanta is usually pretty good there, 9 and 4. Carolina 13 and 13. Expect Atlanta to have a little bit more success moving the ball on the ground, which is what they like to do. Tyler Algier certainly in play. On the pass game side, they should also be fairly successful or efficient compared to what they're used to. I think this hits the over on the 41 team implied total. I know Atlanta plays slow. Carolina not particularly fast either, kind of middle of the road. But I think this hits the over. I think both defenses are terrible enough that the offenses will overcome in this. We got DJ Moore and we have Deonta Foreman as pretty solid options. Hey, if they're going to be running the ball, it's pretty much Tyler Algier. We had Huntley in there getting some run. If you think the pass game is going to come to life, I would doubt it based off of trends. I want to say Marcus Mariota doesn't have over 140 passing yards in any of the games in the last month. But if you think that comes to life in this particular matchup and they're going to have a lot of time, we saw at the beginning of the season that was usually more beneficial for Drake London. Pitts as well as there, but doesn't seem like he's necessarily involved in the game plan, but certainly a stud in his own right as far as talent. So we could see those two have a pretty solid week. If you want to get crazy, DJ Moore, Deonta Foreman, bring it back with one of these Atlanta players, and probably would be leaning Drake London, but I think that could get sneaky in DFS, and I'm not sure how many people are going to be on that, just as the teams kind of are frustrating, for most people in general. So number 8 game on the slate, 41 game total. I think it is one of the more interesting ones, though, on the slate, and where you can probably mine some value in your DFS tournament lineups. Next is number 9 game on the slate, which is Tennessee at Houston. That's a late game, and we're getting into the Houston actually being Tennessee being home favorite. Holy cow. Got everything opposite. Tennessee being road favorites, going into the Houston Dome there. 21.5 team implied total for Tennessee, 19 for Houston. So Tennessee 2.5 point road favorites for a 40.5 game total from Vegas. Getting into the Tennessee side as the favorites, offensive pass protection 24 and 12, not particularly great, but luckily for them, Houston 24 and 24 at getting after the quarterback. Fully expect Tennessee to be able to move the ball in the air if they need to. Don't really expect them to do that, though. On the run game side, Tennessee 14 and 22. Houston absolutely getting obliterated in the run game. 30th and 32 in offensive run DVOA. Expect Tennessee to be able to run the ball all over and pass. When they do pass, it should be effective. Probably going to be a monstrous week for Derrick Henry. He's going to be in all of your seasonal long leagues and dynasty lineups. He should have a monster week this week against Houston. As far as DFS concerned, he's expensive. I don't think a lot of people are going to be on him. So, hey, he could be one of those slate breakers. This could be one of those 220 and 2 touchdown games from Derrick Henry. Just keep that in mind. Slate breaking upside. We got Kittle. We got Justin Jefferson, I think, this week, and I believe here we have Derrick Henry. Maybe I'll make a lineup and just fit in other pieces with those 3 in there and hope something happens. As far as the Houston side, 12 and 27 in the pass protection. Tennessee 19 and 17 at getting after the quarterback. Nothing to write home about here. Davis Mills should be fine as far as having time. It's not going to be terrible, but really the pass game options, I think Nico Collins is out. You're really just down to Brandon Cooks and some scrubs. Chris Moore, who else is over there? I don't even know, but it's not going to be pretty. And the Tennessee is pretty good at stopping the run, so 6th and 3rd. Houston 13 and 25 in run blocking. I know Dameon Pierce, they're trying to get him a bunch of volume, which is good for your cash games, but I don't expect Houston to necessarily be very good in the run game in this. You might see a 21 rush attempt game from Dameon Pierce for 53 yards or 60 yards, something very inefficient. But if you think Tennessee is going to be getting after Houston, he could make it up with 4 or 5 receptions. We've seen him get involved in the pass game here, but otherwise a super avoid for me on the Houston side. Cook's maybe the only interesting pass game option, and then Pierce, not in a good spot rushing the ball. Don't expect Houston to necessarily score a bunch of points, and I think Tennessee is going to be running the ball all over them, which is just going to run out the clock quick. Really, the only piece I'm looking for in this whole matchup is getting Derrick Henry and his massive ceiling into my lineups. Not going to be jamming him in there because he is expensive, but should be a good one nonetheless. Next game, number 10 on the slate, New England at the New York Jets. We have New England going into the Jets as 2.5-point road favorites. 21.25 team implied total. Jets 18.75 team implied total for an overall of 40 from Vegas. Again, 10th game on the slate out of 11. Not very good. New England pass protection 20 and 22. Jets 21 and 10 at getting after the quarterback. Not particularly anything amazing here. Jacoby Myers probably the only thing to worry about in the New England pass game. This is a studs eat kind of scenario. I don't necessarily think he's a stud, but he's the main option there in New England for the pass game. As far as running the ball, New England 4 and 16, the Jets 10 and 14. Hey, not super great there. New England used to running the ball all over people. I don't think they're going to be necessarily super successful here. Damian Harris a little, another week away from injury. I don't think Stevenson's even in play in this. I've been hearing him as a popular option on some DFS shows, and I don't think that's going to be the case this week for Stevenson. Avoid him. I think it's going to be a split between him and Damian Harris, and it's just not looking good on this. So avoid that New England run game, this particular matchup. And pretty much Jacoby Myers is the only one I want from New England in general in this matchup. On the Jets offensive side, we see them 18 and 23rd in pass protection. New England 6 and 5 in the defensive pass rush. Expect the Jets to be under duress here, which is going to be more dump-offs. Luckily, they have Michael Carter. James Robinson hasn't necessarily profiled as a pass-catching running back in his career. He's new. Michael Carter should be the beneficiary of a lot of that. Same with Tyler Conklin. Just expect those two to kind of be the ones, the beneficiary of the Jets being under duress. The only problem is Zach Wilson, when he's under duress, is very poor. New England defense obviously in play due to that. On the run blocking side, Jets are actually pretty good. 17 and 11, New England 26 and 28 stopping the run. Michael Carter, James Robinson should be very effective running the ball. I think they want to keep the ball out of Zach Wilson's hands. I think the Jets are going to be, running the ball effectively, getting the ball out quick, which isn't good for them. But New England doesn't look like they're going to be, super effective on offense. I do actually like the chances of, the Jets upsetting New England here, going 6-2 in the division. Just behind Buffalo there, or probably ahead of Buffalo. But if they go 6-2, upset New England here, according to what Vegas is saying, going, at home, I think the Jets can run the ball. They're going to try to be effective in that, regards, keeping the ball out of Zach Wilson's hands, and I think they will be successful here against New England this week. But as far as DFS is concerned, Michael Carter, certainly in play, especially on the PPR sites like DraftKings. Certainly viable for your PPR leagues that you're doing on a week-to-week basis. Get him in there as well. You should have a solid week. The final game on the slate is actually number 11 here. Washington at Indianapolis, which is very curious. 2 backup quarterbacks and some solid defensive plays here, so keep that in mind. We actually have Washington going into Indianapolis. Dome game here. Indianapolis 3-point home favorites. 21.25 team implied total. Washington 18.25 team implied total for a 39.5 game total overall. Worst one on the slate. And we look at the offensive pass protection for Washington, 29-29. Run blocking, 26-29. Indianapolis's defense, 10 and 16 in the pass, 3 and 8 in the run. I don't know how Washington's going to move the ball. They're going to be under duress, which is going to be shorter dump-off passes and probably Heineke runs, but that could be, a J.D. McKissick type week where he's getting a lot of pass volume. Antonio Gibson, certainly the beneficiary of that pass volume as well. I think that's pretty much where you're going to be looking at in this matchup. I don't think any of the pass game options for Washington outside of maybe tight end is going to be viable, and really that doesn't look good either. Indy defense certainly in play this particular week. It's very much the same script on the other side. So Indianapolis, offensive pass protection 23 and 30, run blocking 31 and 32. And then Washington, pass rush 7 and 29, stopping the run 9 and 4. Don't expect Jonathan Taylor to have a very effective week. I think he's going to get shut down as far as efficiency is concerned. And then we have Sam Ehlinger in there, probably under duress here. Washington number 7 in the pass rush versus 23. The DVOA is a little bit more matched up at 29 and 30. I just don't think Sam Ehlinger is going to have a very good week. You could have, Washington defense as well. They're super cheap. They're probably going to be super popular in this because they're taking on Ehlinger, but it could be, historically bad type of situation where Ehlinger, 2 or 3 turnovers. The weird thing is they kind of punished Matt Ryan for having all those turnovers. They're going to go to Ehlinger. I think they're going to put in a game plan which kind of limits his ability to have those turnovers. So I would expect like a Nyheim Hines and kind of a tight end type of week. Maybe Paris Campbell underneath. We've been seeing him get a bunch of run underneath. I think that's going to be how they're going to attack it with Ehlinger. I think they're going to keep everything super short. It's going to really hinder Jonathan Taylor in this particular matchup, as I think they're going to be trying to get the ball out quick and keeping it short to limit the potential turnovers. So I think that's going to be Nyheim Hines and Paris Campbell being the beneficiaries. Michael Pittman probably going to struggle, and Jonathan Taylor probably going to struggle in this. Not necessarily saying sit them in your seasonal long or dynasty leagues, but temper your expectations. I don't think they're going to have very good weeks in this. Should be kind of a gross game. That's going to do it for the main slate. We'll get into the 2 island games, Sunday night football, which is Green Bay at Buffalo, and then Monday night football, which is Cincinnati and Cleveland. As far as Sunday night football, we have Green Bay going into Buffalo. Buffalo is 10.5-point home favorites. Oh my gosh, Green Bay. Whew, they are bad. So Green Bay, 18.25 team implied total. Buffalo, 28.75 team implied total. They're expected to score a lot of points. 47 game total overall. An offensive pass protection for Green Bay, number 10 and 14. Buffalo, 5 and 4 at getting after quarterback. They don't have Lazard anymore. They don't have Cobb. I think Aaron Rodgers, who is he going to throw it to? Aaron Jones, Robert Tonyan, and some rookies. It's going to be kind of gross. Sammy Watkins, maybe. I don't know. Aaron Rodgers is going to have a poor game. Just expect that. On the run blocking side, Green Bay 5 and 14. Buffalo number 1 and number 1. Don't expect A.J. Dillon or Aaron Jones to be running the ball very well. I think Green Bay is going to be under duress. It could be one of those, 10 or 12 target games to Aaron Jones, especially when teams lose their top wide receiver. The running backs usually absorb a lot of those targets. So that's really Aaron Jones in the pass game on a PPR site. I think that's the only player that's going to do anything in this particular matchup. And that's, projecting if he gets like 10 or 12 target game, which we've seen him have in the past. I think that's the only way any Green Bay Packer is going to have a solid week in this particular matchup. On the Buffalo side, we have number 4 and first in offensive pass protection, Green Bay middle of the pack at 14 and 11. Buffalo pass game should be fine there. Just looking at the run game, 20th and 28, Green Bay 32nd and 31st. Buffalo should be able to run the ball pretty effectively. It gets a little interesting here. Buffalo coming off a bye. They did just spend a decent draft pick on a running back this particular year. Not that Singletary has been playing poorly or, egregiously bad, but a lot of times the rookies get, incorporated into the game plan a lot more following buys. I expect James Cook maybe to start eating in to some of that running back role versus, the late game 2 to 4 opportunities he was getting. I expect that to ramp up to maybe like 6, 8, 9 opportunities this particular matchup. As far as DFS is concerned, though, probably avoiding the Buffalo running backs and then just looking at the pass game, they should be super successful. Stephon Diggs, probably just going to dominate in this particular matchup. If they got a lot of time, Gabe Davis certainly in play as well. Dawson Knox, if they're scoring a bunch of points, could be the beneficiary of one of those touchdowns. That's really all you need from the tight end position is for them to score a touchdown. But pretty bland game here. Pretty much Aaron Jones or bust on the Green Bay side. And for Buffalo, it's, your usual Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen and probably Gabe Davis in this particular matchup. Again, we could see the running backs be a little bit more effective than we're used to in Buffalo. If you want to get really different in this, send in Singletary or, hey, a really different, get James Cook in there and in your captain spot and hope that, hey, they're going to be running the ball all over Green Bay. That's super effective. And he's more incorporated into the game plan moving forward after the bye week. So could be interesting there. Not what I expect, but a way to get different in an island game in one of your lineups anyway. On to the Monday Night Football game, and then that will be it for this particular slate. We're looking at Cincinnati going into Cleveland as 3-point home favorites. 24 team implied total for Cincinnati, and then we're looking at 21 for Cleveland for a 45 Vegas game total. Cincinnati offensive pass protection, number 28 and number 9. Cleveland at 16 and 28. They're kind of flip-flopped. Offensive pass protection looks bad for Cincinnati, but the DVOA is heavily in their favor. On the run game side, Cincinnati 19 and 20, Cleveland 27 and 27. To me, this seems more like a Joe Mixon week as far as being able to run the ball effectively. It is a division opponent that could get, black and blue type thing. We did just lose Jamar Chase, so I expect the pass game to be a little bit more hampered. Again, when people lose their wide receiver one, I know they have some good wide receivers there. A lot of times the beneficiary is the running back and taking, an extra 3 or 4 targets or more in those particular games where they're not expected to have their wide receiver one. Joe Mixon side. On the Cleveland side, 11 and 16 on the pass protection versus Cincinnati 27 and 7. Cleveland should find themselves with a little bit of time to pass the ball. Typically, when that's the case, you can get some deeper targets. I think DPJ maybe hurt himself last week. I couldn't remember, but Cooper could be in play there. And we have Njoku out. Harrison Bryant, now in there at tight end. So likely with all that news, it's just going to be the Amari Cooper show on the pass game. The run blocking side, it gets a little interesting. Number 6 and 2 versus Cincinnati 17 and 10. Cleveland should be effective there at passing the ball, running the ball. That's Chubb, But nothing really standing out on the Cleveland side. You should have some time to pass. Run game should be effective. Expect this to be close. It's a 3-point game. Cincinnati did lose Jamar Chase. Cleveland looks like they should be fine on offense. Cincinnati might, struggle a little bit outside of the run game. So Joe Mixon and Chubb in this particular matchup, probably, your 2 highest point scorers along with Amari Cooper. But as far as island game, that could get a little interesting. Trying to build a lineup in this particular one. If you want to try to go defensive route, get one of those kickers in there, that's probably going to be a good bet in this particular matchup. I know it's popular anyway because they're cheaper, but that's going to do it. That's going to do it for this week, folks. Thanks for stopping in, and hopefully you gain some knowledge that you can apply to your lineups this week. And let's go win some money together. Thanks, folks. Bye.